Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Anna. I am a portrait photographer in the Chicagoland area, and today we're going to be talking about window lit portraits. I initially had this idea around Valentine's Day, and I had gotten some roses as a prop. Starting this year, I wanted to be more conscious about the colors that I was selecting in my photo shoots. The equipment that I was using that day was the Sony a7 III along with an 85mm lens and a reflector. Since Valentine's Day is all about love and passion, red is normally the color that is associated with those emotions, so I had decided to add some red elements into this shoot. Once I had taken the photos, it was time to open up Lightroom and begin editing.
The first thing that we're gonna do, and when you look in the out of camera shot, is to really pay attention to the under eyes and make sure we get rid of that just in Lightroom. The first thing that I want to mention in regards to editing in general, one of the things that I had listened to in a Peter McKinnon video is that beginner photographers have a problem of not paying attention to their histogram. The histogram, if you look on the left hand side, is this little graph that has a lot of spikes and colors in it, and this will tell you if you are blowing anything out in regards to the highlights or the shadows. What I mean by this is a perfect example is I'm going to go into the light panel and I'm going to take the exposure slider and bring it all the way to the right, and you're going to see as the sort of exposure increases, the spikes go to the right hand side. And then when I go down into the shadows and the spikes go to the left hand side. This is going to tell you if your photo, sort of falls in line with, being too bright or too dark. So rule of thumb is to try to stay in the middle and make sure that most of the spikes is going to be sort of in the middle area as well as lower to the bottom of the graph. So that's just a rule of thumb that I'd learned recently. Again, like I had mentioned before in a previous video, I'm trying to get into color grading. So when we go into color and click on color grading right here, you're going to see that the shadows have a bluish greenish tint, and that can be very apparent in my eyes as well as in the background if you pay attention to that. In the midtones, I don't really mess with them that much because this is where the color of the skin appears when you're adjusting, so be very minimal in regards to selecting anything in the midtones. And then lastly, paying attention to the highlights. Obviously, as you can tell, this is a yellowish highlight and this is opposite of blue in the color wheel, so we are good to go. The next thing that we're going to do is go into the healing brush. So click on the band-aid, and the thing that we're going to be really paying attention to is skin textures. So what I mean by this is we're going to go ahead and zoom into my eye, and you're going to notice that the area underneath my eye is smooth, and where the cheek starts, that's where the pores start coming in, and those are the little dots that are there. So when you are editing, or at least when you're using the healing brush and selecting a patch of the area of skin that you want to use to either overlay on another portion of the face, is to match the skin textures. You're gonna see that it's gonna be very weird if I add the skin texture of my cheek with the pores over my eyelid, or at least underneath my eye. This is going to look very weird, and you're going to want to make sure that you're very minimal with this. I had just barely grazed it over the start of the eye socket to raise the eye up a little bit and make sure that it looks a little bit brighter, and you're going to see that when I start to zoom out. Another thing that you can do to really get rid of under eye circles is underneath the band-aid, you're going to see this circle, which is selective edits, and once I tap over this area, you're going to see that that's highlighted. I am just going to go into the light panel and just adjust the exposure. You're also going to be very minimal with this, because if you make it too dark, I'm going to get raccoon eyes, and if I make it too bright, it's going to look very obvious that this has been edited. So try to find a middle ground where it looks that it's slightly brighter, but also not to the point where it looks heavily edited. The last thing that I'm going to mention is as I zoom out, you're going to see that my bra is showing, or at least the bra line is showing through the dress. This is going to be an issue that if you are able to fix it beforehand, should be mentioned to the subject or the model. But if you are in a situation where you are editing these photos and just realize it now, one thing that you can do is just go into the healing brush and just draw a line over it. But sometimes you run into an issue where it doesn't work as well, because some lines, depending on the way that the light source is hitting it, or maybe the way that it's being folded onto the subject, makes it look a little weird when you're trying to edit it in Lightroom. But you can normally just be able to go into Photoshop and just use the clone stamp tool and do it piece by piece. But if you're trying to do it in Lightroom, I would again just make sure that a lot of the textures and a lot of the things that you're going to want to be editing is just going to be very minimal, and go through that painstaking process of going bit by bit. But if you do, it'll end up looking something like this.
The first tip that I have for you is if you are looking to have a photo using just the window light, but you don't want it to be as contrasting as it would be if you are only using that light, is to have a reflector. What's going to happen with that reflector is it's going to take all of the light that's coming from the window and bounce it back onto the subject. And the reasoning as to why I was using a reflector is because I liked the idea of the contrast, but I did not want it to be that significant. Since this is sort of a love passion type photo, I wanted it to still be soft. You can also use different things like a white piece of paper or a white poster board, and it does the same effect if you aren't planning on getting a reflector. Another tip to make sure that the light is going to be soft is to make sure that there are drapes covering the window. The great thing about drapes that are specifically sheer and allow the light to still come in is it's going to become a natural softbox. So it's going to allow the light to still come in, but it won't be as harsh. Last tip that I have for you is to make sure that the subject is aware of any creases or lines in their clothing. I hadn't initially noticed firsthand when I was taking these photos that my bra was causing a line in the dress. So if you are planning on doing a photo shoot, make sure that the subject or the model doesn't have any creases or any lines that's normally supposed to be smooth in their clothing, because it's going to be a hassle to try to get rid of in Lightroom or Photoshop. You are able to fix these lines using the clone stamp tool in Photoshop or the healing brush in Lightroom, but it's going to save you a lot of time beforehand if you notice these things during the shoot, so that way it's able to get fixed right away. And that's the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get notified every single time I post a new video. Interested in videos just like this, I have a playlist created where I go behind the scenes of most of my photo shoots, so that will be listed up here as well as in the description box below. If you're interested in traveling the world with me and seeing what I do in my free time, that will also be listed in the description box below. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.